Eyes Wide Shut is a story that can be told in about 75 minutes. I say that because it was in the 1969 television movie in Austria, directed by Wolfgang Glück. Because that runtime wouldn't be received well as a cinematic release, Stanley Kubrick made his adaptation of Traumnovelle, clocking in at 159 minutes, well over double his Austrian counterpart. This gave time Kubrick needed to intertwine his own characters, lore, and themes. It's sort of curious how Eyes Wide Shut hits the same notes, the same beats, as the adaptation half its length. So, whenever we have a scene here, a cut there, that's unique to Kubrick, does it make it more interesting or important? We're going to look at some of his scene additions that are outside of Gluck's interpretation of Arthur Schnitzler's novella, Traumnovelle or Dream Story. For the sake of the video, I may not be mentioning different interpretations between similar scenes. If you want to see that, leave a comment below. Oh yeah, I just might share some film theories that may cause anxiety, rage, and disbelief, but that's why you're here, I hope. If you're a fan of Eyes Wide Shut, I recommend watching the Austrian version, and kindly consider a like, share, or subscribe if you're a fan of this content. Gluck's opening is rather theater-like. It's shot pretty flat, but it serves its purpose by introducing the husband and wife in their home, their daughter who likes to read, and house staff. Kubrick does the same. We see Bill and Alice in their home, their daughter likes to read, and house staff, as in a babysitter. However, Kubrick inserted a prelude, a seemingly mundane one, with Bill rummaging through the bedroom before reuniting with Alice on the toilet. This moment could be best described as banal to just plain unappealing. Traumnovelle jumps in with conflict between husband and wife, Fridolin and Albertine. After having a pretty Victorian discussion about one's fantasies, Fridolin takes off for Marion. With Kubrick, there is an entire new act setting up lore and backstory at a very opulent Christmas party. We are introduced to new characters of Victor Ziegler, Sandor the Hungarian, two young model-type women, and Mandy. Nick Nightingale is here too, but he has his Austrian version. Kubrick introduces him early, giving him more character development and displaying relative social-economic distance between him and Bill. Sandor, who tries to seduce Alice, will not be seen or mentioned again, while Alice's sneer at the attention Bill is getting from his two admirers, they too will be unseen, but not forgotten. Whatever the reason, these characters help lead or mislead what kind of story we're going to experience. It is in the first act, after all. The most important new character here is Victor Ziegler. There is no equivalent in Traumnovelle. Victor comes across as a benefactor, a client. However, he may be one of at least two antagonists. Victor represents great wealth, status, and persuasion beyond Bill's reach, no matter how hard he tries. Mandy is also a new character. She replaces some role of Mitzi. We will know her as Domino of the street corner. The bathroom scene is likely more important than anything we've eavesdropped on the party floor. We get a bigger idea of Victor's extravagance as well as his moral compass. Isn't Mrs. Ziegler somewhere in the house? Most of all, Bill saves Mandy's life. Maybe this will foreshadow something later. Mandy is a walking tragedy, a throwaway character, easily used and thrown aside. Easily said because that's how Ziegler sees her as. Mandy personifies those who are, most likely, compensated to participate in the secret organization that hosts the cannot-be-named festivities. Somewhat like Traumnovelle, Bill will see Mandy 3 times, but Ziegler adds another angle in Kubrick's story as he is the only other person in the film Bill talks to about Mandy. While the party is over, we still haven't reached a moment Alice shared her fantasies with Bill. That's only minutes into the opening of Traumnovelle. Kubrick gives us a montage beginning with a brief scene in the bedroom where Alice looks like she's held captive. We get the life and times of the Harfords, including more video evidence their daughter likes to read. Some may want to opine on Kubrick's imagery, worthy of an R rating, but it is deliberately sterile. Alice shows how Christmas bores her before she finds escape in her medicine cabinet. Through a haze of smoke climbing high to the ceiling comes the tete-a-tete between Bill and Alice. Unlike the rather polite conversation with Gluck, it's a biting, ego-stomping argument at Bill's expense. There is no kissing and making up. Bill is called away, almost saved, by a phone call to Marion's place. This is where Kubrick and Gluck's timelines reunite, including meeting Marion, her dead father, and feeling tempted by her. The bump on the street by ruffians, though the backstory behind each may be very different, and meeting Mitzi or Domino on the street. Before Bill steps into Domino's parlor, Eyes Wide Shut has a much longer setup, a tease between Bill and Domino as they walk down the street. Now Kubrick and Gluck sync up again. Bill and Fredolin follow the woman from the street to their apartment door. While we see in Gluck's Traumnovelle the lights go on and no time is wasted getting busy, once again Kubrick decides to add some padding. Domino turns on the lights and she and Bill talk in the kitchen. This really sets up Bill intimately experiencing the lifestyles of the less affluent that he's helping to perpetuate. There's tease, anticipation, remorse, not to mention an opportunity for Kubrick fans to decipher the various clues inside Domino's apartment. It's more patient than Traumnovelle, for whatever reason is in a hurry. Maybe out of preserving the runtime for television, or an example of how Fredolin was rushing into things and got in over his head. The timeline reunites Kubrick and Gluck after both husbands walk out on their hosts. Each walks into a drinking establishment, meets up with Nightingale. Hearing about the party, they rent a costume from a shady proprietor with a daughter acting too old for her age. They find and crash the party. The theme between both versions are very similar, though Kubrick showcases performers to push a rating too spicy for television with additional scenes. The biggest addition is the introduction of the antagonist, the Red Cloak. Whereas in Traumnovelle, Fredolin confronts a fraternity. Bill gets called out by a masked figure with a scepter. This makes it more personal for Bill, who does something Fredolin does not: unmask in front of the crowd. More importantly, his safety is perceived at risk. There is one other difference between Traumnovelle and Eyes Wide Shut, and that is the sacrifice in exchange for Fredolin or Bill's escape. With Traumnovelle, Mitzi volunteers, who would be Domino in Eyes Wide Shut. However, Kubrick goes with Mandy, the woman who Bill saves, a life for a life. After being exiled from paradise, both versions run parallel again. The wives wake up from a dream. The husbands search for Nightingale the next morning. Bill and Fredolin return their costumes, minus the mask, before heading back to Pleasure Palace. Kubrick draws this out much longer than Gluck's abbreviated depiction. Each tries their luck with Marion, but to no avail. This is one of the very few examples Kubrick was more terse than Gluck. Kubrick just phoned this one in. Then we come to where Fredolin and Bill are seeking out redemption for their egos. Fredolin returns to Mitzi, Bill returns to Domino, both bearing gifts. With Gluck, Fredolin meets Mitzi's roommate at the doorway, has his gift confiscated, and is told Mitzi is at the hospital, and Fredolin leaves empty-handed. With Kubrick, Bill is greeted by Sally and is led inside. It's a whole new scene, with dialogue between them, both flirting in a cleaner kitchen. Like Traumnovelle, Bill will have his gift taken and learn Domino has left and maybe never to come back. What is somewhat similar, Bill is told Domino was diagnosed with a transmissible virus, something Mitzi hinted to Fredolin. In Traumnovelle, Fredolin heads to a pub for a drink, but not so fast with Kubrick. Bill senses dread, spotting a creepy guy in a trench coat following him. If the Red Cloak was the head of the organization, the menacing bald guy is its arms and legs. He breaks them too. This coerces Bill to seek refuge from his tracker inside a quaint establishment for a drink, and to peruse the newspaper. Both versions show a visit to the morgue, and in a display of creative differences, Fredolin is not 100% convinced it is the body of Mitzi. However, Bill and the viewer have no doubt it was Mandy. While Fredolin would return home, Bill gets called away in a new additional scene by Victor. Traumnovelle is a conflict between man versus himself, with a brief encounter with a faceless entity that represents a world he literally cannot visit. The deliberate omission of an antagonist leaves us with the idea that Fredolin's conflict is between a world he thinks he lusts for and seeing it up close that is not appealing, terse, and deadly. Eyes Wide Shut makes Victor a foil of Bill. It's not just Bill against an underground hush-hush society. The story is more than man versus himself or man versus the world. It's Bill against Victor too. Being a foil means contrasts, and there are contrasts between the two, whether it be economic, moral, or ethical. Bill generally feels remorse over Mandy. Victor, he feels nothing. Foils also keep the protagonist from his goals. What were Bill's goals? Coming up with his own conclusions. The conflict between Victor and Bill was not over Bill crashing the Mardi Gras party. It was the truth behind how Mandy died and what had happened to Nick. When Bill hints with his own accusations, his theories, is when Victor loses his control. Because of a hint, he lost control of the narrative. This scene is what ultimately makes Victor the antagonist. Victor is not a nice guy. We see how he treats Mandy early and how he talks about her late. But he's going to get away with it. Victor is forgiven, admired, or just presumed free because of his obscene wealth. His opinions go pretty much unchallenged because his world continues as is unchallenged. The status quo wins, and the stability of his private membership resumes. Returning home, we see the mirrored experiences of Bill and Fredolin. They come home, they see a mask on the bed, the husband confesses to the wife. For Traumnovelle, it's the end of the story, but who knows what tomorrow may bring. For Eyes Wide Shut, it's a trip to the toy store. It's an epilogue, or maybe just a continuation of the conversation the night before, but does go a little further than its Austrian offshoot. It reunites the entire family, daughter included, and Alice gives her price for resuming their marriage. Kubrick's additional scenes added new characters, nuance, and lore without changing the story. I would argue at all. Sure, it's modernized, set in a different time and country. A scene here or there may have different context, but Eyes Wide Shut is almost a retelling of Glück's adaptation, but Kubrick just took twice as long. Let me know in the comments below what was your favorite scene Kubrick added to the story. This is Mr. G of Synergy saying, everything Bill reads is bad news. Check out other videos on the channel. Thanks for watching.